Good afternoon, distinguished guest, esteemed panelist, ladies and gentlemen. I am Himangi Sinha, Project Head, World Intellectual Foundation, and it is my great privilege to welcome you all to this afternoon. Before we begin, let me briefly introduce you to the two institutions that have come together to host this important seminar. The World Intellectual Foundation, established in January 2021, and it is a global non-partisan think tank. Its mission is to promote bold, innovative, and research-driven ideas for individuals, organizations, and governments. Our focus is on peace, prosperity, and sustainability worldwide, and I am very happy to share our two global projects, which we are launching very soon. First is Responsible Nation Index, a pioneer global index ranking countries on responsible behavior. The second is Seva Parmo Dharm, a monumental documentation of over 2 lakh grassroots projects across India, highlighting unique humanitarian development models of India. Our report, Delhi, a city in crisis, has been widely appreciated by the government and policymaker for its strong empirical research and practical policy recommendations. Another landmark study, Cultural Policy for India, a framework, has further reinforced WIF's role as a thought leader in policy and governance research. We had the privilege of submitting this report to the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, where it was duly taken into consideration. The Dr. Ambedkar International Center, our co-host, is an autonomous institution under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, established to honor the vision of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. DAIC serves as a premier hub for research, policy advocacy, and public engagement on issues of social justice, equality, and inclusive growth, carrying forward Baba Saheb's legacy in addressing contemporary challenges. On behalf of the World Intellectual Foundation and Dr. Ambedkar International Center, it is my great honor to welcome you all to today's seminar on geopolitical churning, technological disruption, and modern warfare. We are gathered here today at a critical juncture, where rapid technological change, evolving geopolitical dynamics, and emerging security challenges demand a robust dialogue on India's strategic preparedness and autonomy. This seminar aims to bring together diverse perspectives from military leadership, diplomacy, strategic analysis, and journalism to understand the contemporary paradigm of conflict and chart a path forward. It is my honor to introduce our distinguished panelist, Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. He is honored with Param Vishisht Seva Medal. He is honored with Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Yuddha Seva Medal, Seva Medal. Lieutenant General Shukla is renowned for his leadership in strategic warfare, military modernization, and defense policy. He has commanded critical formation, including a mountain division and infantry brigade in counter-insurgency operations and ex-corp in Bhatinda. As GOC in C of Army Training Command, he has shaped India's military training doctrine and future warfare strategies. Currently a member of the Union Public Service Commission, he continued to influence national security policy making. Our second esteemed guest is Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, Indian Forest. He is retired from Indian Foreign Service and a distinguished fellow of Vivekanand International Foundation. A seasoned diplomat, Ambassador Trigunayat has served in Indian mission across Asia, Africa, Europe, and the USA. His career opens bilateral and multilateral diplomacy, regional security, and global strategic affairs. As a distinguished fellow at the Vivekanand International Foundation, he continues to contribute actively to policy debates, strategic thought leadership, and foreign affairs analysis. Lieutenant General Devendra Pratap Pandey, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Vishisht Seva Medal. He is honored with all these. Lieutenant General Pandey is a distinguished retired general officer of the Indian Army with nearly 39 years of service. He has held key commands, including the Srinagar-based Chinar Corps and as commander of the Army College Mao. He was also the first Director General of Territorial Army. He brings deep expertise in operational strategy, counterinsurgency, and modern military doctrine. The next esteemed guest is Sandeep Unnithan, Executive Editor, India Today. Sandeep Unnithan is Editor-in-Chief of Chakra News and Consulting Editor with India Today's digital and TV platforms. He has authored Black Tornado and Operation X, focusing on India's military history and covert operations. A passionate advocate of indigenous defense technology, he has hosted the series Guns of India and brings a unique perspective at the intersection of media, strategic analysis, and defense discourse. Finally, we would privileged to have Colonel Akash Patil, Director of the Dr. Ambedkar International Center and the Dr. Ambedkar National Memorial as the moderator of today's session. Now I would like to request Professor Ribuna Mittal, Director of Research and Innovation, World Intellectual Foundation, to kindly felicitate our distinguished panelist. Now we look forward to an insightful, thought-provoking, and engaging session. Over to you, Akash.
Thank you, ma'am, so much. A very warm good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Hind, Namaskar. Just a word about DAIC. As ma'am said, we are not only a convention center, sir. We are supposed to be center of excellence in socio-economic transformation studies and Buddhist studies. We do organize a lot of seminars, in the line of which this is the one on geopolitical churning, technological disruptions, and modern warfare. And ladies and gentlemen, believe me, what a stellar panel we have today. Who else could guide us more on this very interesting subject? You know, on the same day, Combined Commanders Conference is going on. The same type of issues are being deliberated upon. We all must say that we are thankful to this great panel here. They have taken out their time. And let us begin. In fact, there are so many questions. As a moderator, one is urged to ask so many. But how we will go about it is we will first ask each of the panelists to give 4 or 5 minutes their opening narrative, followed by a moderation. And then we will have last concluding remarks. We will open the house if the time permits. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living through a time of profound transformation in the global strategic environment. The great political rivalries, shifting alliances, economic turbulence, the regional conflicts, they are all redefining the world order. Again, to combine with it the technological disruptions like artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, information warfare, they are changing the very nature of conflict. We all have seen that. With social media, we all are realizing this, that the very nature of conflict is being changed. For India, which is in the volatile neighborhood, still it is coming up as a confident global player amongst all this turmoil. What we should do to ensure our strategic autonomy remains, what we should do to strengthen our defense capabilities, what we should do, most importantly, so that future wars, we face them, because not the same conditions we will face again. We all know that. Let us dive down deep into these topics. May I now request General Shukla to please give his opening comments on this very interesting topic. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Akash. Can you hear me now? All right. So we spoke of geopolitical churn, we spoke of technology, and we spoke of the character of war. So let me just illustrate it with one example as I read these subjects. I mean, they could be read in multiple ways. So let's take the first. What, in my view, is the major geopolitical swivel? So if you take your mind back to the 1990s, Bill Clinton made a very famous statement. He said, it's the economy, stupid. Matlab ye tha that at the end of the day, in domestic politics and in the international system, all that mattered was the state of the economy. And therefore, all conversations, boil down to inflation, prices, trade, commerce, and business. The international institutions which grew in salience were IMF, World Bank, all kinds of economic structures. Today, I may posit that it is national security stupid. See, why do I say that? Look at the missiles and drones flying across the skies of Europe. The Europeans, if you visited them 10 years back, would say, we are prosperous, we'll never fight. It is the stupid Asians and Africans who fight. We are so prosperous, we'll never need to fight. So Germans, when they were asked to provide troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, they kind of scoffed at the Americans and said, we don't patrol by night, as if you patrol only by day. Somebody else, when they were offered to give troops or asked to give troops, they gave dogs. This was contempt for national security because it didn't seem to matter in their lives. Today, drones, missiles are flying across the skies of Europe, as I said, West Asia. You see Rising Lion, then you see Midnight Hammer, Qatar. I mean, it's just endless. Let me ask you, Russians are far poorer than the Europeans, but they invested in their military. Today, who's better off? It may be controversial, but the Europeans are scared. Abhi, Trump, once he has twisted their ears, now they are scaling up budgets to 5%, so on and so forth. Taiwan has been told privately by the Americans, scale up your budget to 10% or we are not coming to your rescue. They've got it to 3%. Japan, South Korea, similarly. America, and we'll discuss this later, in my view, is a retreating, challenged hegemon, is spending $175 billion on its Golden Dome, air defense. Our defense budget is just $90 billion. So I'm not justifying it this way or that way, but today the instrument of force and where you position it in your strategic calculus matters greatly. And let me say, this is my favorite time, this is I think the 200th time I'm saying it. Who gave us this wisdom, which we neglected post 47? Chanakya. When he said, Shastra ko bhuloge to Sanskriti khodoge. Shastra ka tyag karoge to Rashtra hi khodoge. He was saying, carefully position your instrument of force in your strategic calculus. In our case, Sindoor was good, but it's going to be the beginning of what I say, multiple crisis, conflicts and confrontations. Today, the Combined Commanders Conference is on. It's focusing on reimagining national security. So this is one part of the challenge. What is the technology challenge? If I just say that technology is driving geopolitics and national security like never before. So I'll give you an example. I left the army in 2022. DP left a little after me. When I left, drones had not come. We used to see drones in weddings. That's also the time Ukraine conflict broke out. Now look at the dilemma before the Ukrainians. They are a country without a navy, without an air force. 3 F-16s were given to them by the Americans. They were never really used. A country without a navy and the air force has kept the world's foremost military power at bay for 3.5 years on the strength of technological innovation. Israel got air supremacy in West Asia in 3.5 days. Russia has not been able to get air supremacy in Ukraine in 3.5 years because of dronery. They have discovered the art and science of dronery. So just allow me 2 minutes, Akash. I'll just explain this with a practical example. So the Ukrainians start with wedding drones. Somebody puts a camera. Somebody puts a chip. Computer vision starts. Ukrainians had a lot of strength in their basic IT. So they start discovering when the signals are jammed from the GPS, कि भाई ये जो chip है, ये camera, this allows the drone to auto-navigate. Then it allows them to auto-select targets. At this point in their infantry battalions, they induct 2 AI engineers and 2 data engineers. I haven't seen it happening anywhere. I don't think it's happened in the Indian Army. AI and data engineers. Those chaps, calibrate the combat possibilities with technology. And soon the drone gets optimized, it carries explosives, ISRs, you get batteries. What began with 100 kilometers in spiderweb reached 3,000 kilometers. Then drone swarming, they have started doing wonders. They take their workshops to the site. So today if a drone fires on Friday, it misses the target, you modify the rocket motor, and through 3D printing, it's back on the battlefield. In our case, what would have happened? The conflict would have ended, we would have written lessons learned, then the next conflict. I'm saying this is the pace at which it's happening. Now look at the combat outcomes. This year, Ukraine is firing 8 million drones, more than the artillery that they fired last year. I'm a gunner, artillery chap, I have to eat humble pie because artillery is challenged. I have visited Ukraine, I have been to their Nemesis battalion. Anybody from the, armored core tanks have stopped moving. Drones have eclipsed maneuver. Today they are being taken to their front lines, infantry is being targeted, lethal front lines. The Ukrainians have now got a plan to reduce the edge that the Russians had in manpower through drones. And it is strategic air power. It's hitting power grids. जो wedding drones थे on the back of technological innovation, this is what has happened. And I'll just make 30 seconds more. The Americans, having learned from Ukraine and China, what have they done? Last month, they have inducted the CTOs of Palantir, Thinking Machine Lab, Scale AI, and Anduril. They have inducted them as lieutenant colonels and colonels in their army. Unprecedented. Why? Because the military said they are civilians, we can't share data. So Hexit says they are now colonels, now they share data, they will visit your ops rooms. So my conclusion is this: what has happened is not technology, it is the war alone, it is the war fighter, the entrepreneur, say somebody like Alex Karp, CTO of Palantir, and Elon Musk, Starlinks, whom many describe as the greatest scientist since Edison. So these three, the marketplace and the theater of war. Now these are the dramatic changes in technology and character of war amidst this geopolitical swivels. So the reimagination that we have to do in our national security structures go far beyond theaterization. Ab theaterization ki baat padhte rehte hain, it is a 1990 debate. Agar hum kare na kare, it doesn't make a difference. But these are the big issues that we have to address, which lie at the intersect of these geopolitical swivels, this technological tsunami, and these cultural corrections. Entrepreneur, technologist, who are now at the... And I make just one last point. So World War II, we heard of Montgomery, Patton, 71 was Sam Manekshaw, Sagat Singh, 65 was Harbaksh Singh. Who are the generals in Ukraine? Has anybody heard? Because the generals in Ukraine are Elon Musk, Alex Karp, and Palmer Luckey. So this is the transformation that has occurred in the character of war, and I think that should be a good beginning to take this conversation forward.
Thank you so much, sir, for that perspective on technological tsunami. May I now request Ambassador Anil Trigunayat to give his opening remarks on this topic of geopolitical churning and the challenges which India faces, sir.
Thank you once again for inviting me, and this is the first time I'm participating in a conference at your center. Congratulations once again for this fabulous facility and the work that you are doing. In 5 minutes, if I were to summarize what is happening in the world, is a difficult task, but let me try it. We all know that the global governance is in crisis, especially the kind of global governance that came out of the World War II. And after that, the very same countries that brought in this liberal democratic order and the rules which they expect everybody else to follow, are the ones who have completely decimated them. United States happens to be the primary actor in that regard. They have become highly protectionist today. So basically, anything that we look at from India's point of view is universalism. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is universalism in action. But for them, it is only up to their borders or their own interests. So as you know that in the olden times, we used to call that there are no friends or enemies, it's only your interests. So today, transactionalism and unilateralism have become the currency of the international discourse. Now, in that kind of a situation, and I often wonder that we have been signing these comprehensive strategic partnerships with various countries, hoping that they are going to come and stand up for us at some time or the other. And I'm very happy that what Trump has done is good for us. It should be an eye-opening for us, because we have suffered from stasis through China, when we used to call Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. Last 25 years, we had begun to think the United States needs us because of China and is going to stand by us because of that. Even that has, in my view, been decimated to a great extent. And then we have a 4G, as I call 4x4 matrix, a competition that is going on. It is geopolitical competition, geoeconomic competition, geo-religious competition, and the geotechnological competition, and contestations across geographies and across countries. And this is something that we need to prepare going forward in a very different way, because each challenge has its own dynamic, and we can discuss about it. Then you have the 4 wars at the moment, which we can call as black swan events. And they are simultaneously operating at different levels. The first one, of course, was the pandemic, which impacted virtually the whole world in many ways. While it has not been over, we had the Russia-Ukraine war, which was not expected, as General Shukla also mentioned. But it happened, and it has caused a major destabilization in the world, especially in the global south. And then, while it was going on, you had the Middle East war, which is still continuing, and where it shows that absolute power, even if you have, you can't win a war. And my theory is that none of these superpowers have been able to win a war. They have been able to destroy the countries. And if you just think as students, that USA lost in Afghanistan and Vietnam, China lost in Vietnam, Soviet Union lost in Afghanistan and got disintegrated. So we got to be careful. That's why we are defense. But today, United States is renaming its Department of Defense into Department of War. Now that's a fundamental shift that is taking place from a president who claims to be a pacifist president and wanting after peace. So this kind of disruption that is taking place, tariffs and all that, is just simple game, and that is going to be played out, and that's a part of the geoeconomics that is taking place. But the weaponization of financial instruments, the weaponization of food, fuel, and fertilizers is something that is challenging everyone today. Now, how does India basically coping up with that? And we can discuss during the... You see, I still feel that first thing that we have to do is, if we want to be counted, today we are being heard, we are being looked up to. For many reasons, the largest democracy, we have going to be the biggest market, the largest youth dividend going forward at least until 2050. And we are the fastest growing major economy despite all the odds. So naturally, we have that kind of a heft that must attract everybody. But then until and unless everyone, those who count, have a stakeholdership in our being what we are, we will be shortchanged often. And we have seen it in the recent past. So we'll have to work on it. For that, it is very important that our neighborhood remains, I would not say docile, but I will say broadly on the same page as we are. We have tried this neighborhood first policy. We are looking at West Asia, which is actually, in my view, is the existential region for us. Existential, I'm telling you. If something happens there, we will have immediate consequences and far-reaching consequences. Therefore, we're interested in stability, safety, security. In order to do that, we need to play a greater role. We can't be the bystander and think that things will settle down, because there's a desire in that part of the world to look at India and come. This is something that we'll have to see. Africa, we can't have an ad hoc approach. Until 2018, when Prime Minister Modi went to Kampala, Uganda, and spoke at the parliament there, we did not have an Africa policy. It was the first time that 10 guiding principles were elucidated by him. Which means what? Which means Africa for the Africans. And that's very important. Latin America has been on the sidelines. It's only now recently that we have begun to closely collaborate with Chile, with other countries. China. I mean, we must learn from our adversary also. The Chinese have used what they have against every country that they can. Certain countries, they use debt diplomacy. Other countries, they control the rare earths. They won't allow. The biggest power in the world comes to their knees to talk to them. Today's tweet, if you see President Trump about China and US negotiations that are taking place, that will give you an idea that when you talk from the position of strength and power, when you are a power, then it makes sense to everybody else. So the crux is, India will have to develop its global comprehensive power, which means a strong military which should be defensive in nature, but when needed, it should be able to give a fitting response to 2.5 theaters, whatever we talk about. We should have an economy which should be immune, basically, from these kind of unilateral sanctions. We have to develop some kind of things. We have not been able to do that. We should have a social cohesiveness in the country. That's extremely important, because if you internally are weak, you will be weaker. For the adversary will always get hold of some people there. We must have a smart diplomacy, an agile diplomacy, and active diplomacy at all times. Thank you.
Indeed, sir, that is a very valid point. What Ambassador Anil Tigunayat said, we must develop comprehensively. We must have social order. Because what matters internally, that is most important. May I now shift to General Pandey, who has been on the ground. He was the man on ground after the abrogation of Article 370. Sir, I am just introducing you for the larger interest of the students who are here. So, commanding a Chinar Corps, in fact, it is one of the most important thing. And with General Pandey's experience, I would say he has seen the rise of what we call as asymmetric and hybrid warfare. So, your opening remarks, please.
Firstly, thanks for the opportunity to be here and thanks for the introduction. When you speak after two very, very eminent speakers, then there is nothing much left to speak on a subject. It may be as much as vast, it may be. But let me just try and say something, when in front of them. I'll give an answer first, what we need to do, and then I'll talk of the problem statement. It's very important to develop a national character. A national character which thinks of nation first, of nationalism, of Bharat, of tricolor, of thinking of the nation as something above oneself. So this is a solution. And therefore, there are a huge number of problems and gaps which are there, and therefore, our national security is certain. Second is that we need to develop a civilizational pride in our history. Every nation in the world, even the Saudis who are tribalistic in mind, or you go to Uzbek, every country has got great pride in their respective country or traditions, and they actually feel very great about it. These two things are missing from our country. If you do not develop a national pride, your national security will always be held hostage and will be leveraged. Externally and internally, I'll talk about it later. The second thing which General Shukla talked again, I'll just repeat. If you're looking for a vision, for the first time, we have a vision in front of us, thanks to the Prime Minister, a vision of Viksit Bharat 2047. A vision of Viksit Bharat will remain only a mere vision if it is not supported equally. And I'm not saying supported, it's an incorrect word. There have to be two pillars of Surakshit Bharat at the rate of 2047. So, Cholas lost. The Cholas built the empire, the cultural and economic and military power based on their powerful military. And the day the traders started taking the money off from this thing, their shipping went down and they lost the sheen and the glamour and the power on the seas. And Cholas became extinct over a period of time. But today, in the modern world, for a Viksit Bharat, technology is very, very important. And so is for Surakshit Bharat. And therefore, technology becomes that joining factor between the two in which we need to invest. And very quickly, I'll just ask a question. Whose responsibility is national security? Is it of the Prime Minister? Is it of the Home Minister? Is it of the military? But in the modern world, national security is responsibility of each and every nation, each and every citizen. Why so? And what is missing? I'll first answer the question of what is missing. Where is the academia today in the national security paradigm? Where is the industry to support the national security? Where are the businesses which should feed in the money to ensure the national security is fed in? Because modern warfare has changed something very, very drastically. The wars and battles were fought along a line. It's called a front line, in which soldiers fought against the enemy soldiers in a brutal hand-to-hand, weapon-to-weapon, firearm to firearm, and later on raised on to an arty shell going to arty shell. Distance from this line, wherein the violence was brought upon each other, remained to a degree of about maybe from 200 meters to about 20 kilometers. So if you are out of the range of 20 kilometers from the front line, you are all safe. Modern warfare has changed everything. The first target today is not going to be the soldier. The first targets are going to be the civilians and civilian infrastructure. The stake for civilians has risen as equally higher in the national security paradigm as equal to military. And therefore, if the academia, if the business, if the industry doesn't have the equal stakeholding effect, then I think our national security responsibility will be on a very, very narrow bandwidth. What has also changed today? Denial regimes. The denial regime in which trade, tariff, technology, and the resources which power these are going to be denied. It is not only going to be denied to the military, but is also going to be denied to the population. And they are very, very important component today of your national security component. Let me just go back a little bit about the national character and nationalism aspect which I was talking of. Let's take Bharat as an entity, and Jan Shukla talked about Chanakya. So Bharat was an entity which we understand bounded by certain geographical construct, Indian subcontinent, if I may say. One thing has been a constant. While everything is changing, technology has come, new countries have come, international organizations have come, one thing has remained constant. Our borders have shrunk every century and continues to shrink even today, because we do not have a national character, a faith in something which is national, common to each and every citizen. What has changed? Critically in last maybe about 200 years, 1,000 years I've just talked of, maybe about 200 years. We got new challenges which have come to our fringes. We had Pakistan, a creation for strategic depth or buffer between the Soviet Union. China has replaced Soviet Union and has become a major challenge. You look at Bangladesh, a very recent creation, and has now become a challenge. You look at Myanmar, a proxy front for disturbances onto our northeast. You look at Nepal, which is actually on the fringe on this side or that side, has become a major national security challenge. So suddenly, we have got new issues which started coming and pushing us inside. While they push inside, what is happening within inside? Our moorings, our calls are not from Bharat per se or India per se. We are attaching significance to the world which is beyond. Communist, socialism are taking their ideologies from China, from Russia, from books which are foreign to our country or foreign to our nation. You got capitalism, materialism, hustle for material well-being from the Western moorings. So every youth today of Gen Z wants to leave the country and get across to Canada, UK, Europe, or America. Look at the fractures which are. Even our religious moorings are coming from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, from Vatican. Who is drawing your internal moorings to call our own? I don't want to talk about the fault lines. Though the pressure from outside is increasing, and from within ourselves, people are getting fractured and going outside. And what has impacted, it is not new, it has been gradual. This is now being witnessed very clearly thanks to technology, thanks to information domain, thanks to social media, which we castigate. This awareness has started coming about in the recent time because almost everybody is contesting these internal challenges and the external push which is happening. And therefore, this evidence is available to you, and I'm grateful for the organization to get young people here who need to actually understand. And the line which I quote very often, those who forget their roots are consigned to be rootless forever. And that is what is happening, and we are just talking few minutes back before coming in here, that every brown person who may be stinkiest of richest guy in the Western hemisphere, in the Western countries, is a second, third grade citizen there. He doesn't have the power, she doesn't have the empowerment. They may have the place, a great place to stay, but actually you belong to a subcontinent called Bharat subcontinent, which is absolutely unique, and therefore we need to develop this. Right? What we need to do further, and I think I've just articulated and I'll just summarize that. We need to start developing a very, very strong academic environment on national security, and which professors, teachers, interns, students need to talk about it much more and write about it. Because the more you think and write, your stake starts getting much more deeper in this facet. We need to actually encourage, we as a country, when we start, especially in the colleges, when we go out in the colleges, whom do we hate the most? We start hating the businesses most. Please understand, these businesses, the private players, are the ones who drive your economy, not the government of India. No governments drive economy. It is the private players, the businesses. If you don't have great economy, you will never be able to get ahead in life. And therefore, we need to start appreciating money, economy, and those people who risk to ensure that the money comes around and is placed around for your Surakshit and Viksit Bharat to take place. And we need to also invest in our industry. And the last, in the term of military, we must understand that while we are transiting to high-intensive tech-based war fighting and warfare systems, but yet, till the time in next 20-25 years we are there, we need to continue to ensure that a fair balance in a hard, brutal war fighting also remains, because eventually our mountains and jungles have a challenge for tech to be played out. Right? It is not Ukraine or Israel, where even tech is failing. But we must develop tech, but we need to also have a great human resource to fight the brutal fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Indeed, Viksit Bharat also has to be Surakshit Bharat. So very important point which General Pandey has brought out, that national security is everybody's responsibility. Sir, you would be happy to note that we have a lot of Gen Zs in the auditorium, and we have a lot of academia also. Professors are here from various colleges, whom I know. So taking this ahead, we have Mr. Sandeep Unnithan, an acclaimed journalist, who provides deep insights into defense and security with his in-depth not only reporting but also analysis. May I request Mr. Sandeep to give his opening remarks on this topic, please?
Thank you, Colonel Patel, and I'd like to thank the Dr. Ambedkar International Center and the World Intellectual Foundation for inviting me here. And of course, my distinguished panelists. I've followed all of them very closely, and I learned a lot from each one of them. So it's truly an honor for me here to be here amongst them, and of course amongst you all young minds. I want to take forward what General Shukla mentioned about how warfare itself is changing. You heard the fact of how drone warfare has come in big time, and I want to talk about one particular aspect of that. A dronery that has come in since 2016, almost a decade now, since Nagorno-Karabakh and all that. What we are seeing today is very interesting, and I'm looking at the Russia-Ukraine war in particular. As you heard, it's played out over 3.5 years. Now, the first year of that conflict, 2022, was a conventional war. The Russians came in with tanks, they came in with infantry, artillery, and air cover. Now, the second year of the conflict in 2023, it was all about artillery. And the Russians were firing, if I recall, on an average, 20,000 rounds a day, 20,000 shells a day, rockets and artillery shells. And to give you an idea, during the entire Kargil war, the Indian Army fired 2.5 lakh shells. So the Russians were firing that in 10 days. So that is the kind of intense artillery that you saw in the second year of conflict. Now, in the third year, that's in 2024, something very interesting happened, and this is where drones come in. You're seeing drones replacing all of these platforms, literally all the aircraft, the artillery, the tanks, infantry even. Now drones have become something like small arms, they've become artillery, they've become air defense, they've become long-range bombers. And you saw on the 7th of October, the Russian Federation launched a drone strike against Ukraine, where they fired 800 kamikaze drones. And what was that drone type that they fired? It's a very interesting type of weapon that they fired. And this is something that I think singularly is one of the most impactful platforms that we have seen in our time. It's the Geran 2. The Russians call it the Geran 2, which is a version of the Iranian Shahed 136. Now this is, if you see it, it's a very distinctive looking platform. It's about 11 feet high. It's about 6 feet wide. It's a very simple propeller. It carries about 50 kgs of explosives and various things. That is the Shahed 136 just behind you. Thank you for that. It's a very simple, it's not high tech, it's low tech. The Russians have taken it from the Iranians. And you know where the Iranians took it from? Guess who invented this platform? This fantastic platform, which it's the Germans, believe it or not. West Germany designed this platform in the 1990s. A company called Dornier, which all of you must be very familiar with. It's an aircraft company. It was called the Drone Anti-Radar, DAR. Now, this was a very low-cost platform that the Germans had come up with to strike at Soviet radar installations. It was an anti-radiation missile, basically. And they made it was a cheap, low-cost option to, they built for tens of thousands of them. They wanted to build it against and fire it against the Russians. Now look at the way geopolitics takes place. A German design goes to the Iranians, who, because they don't have an air force, they don't have a navy of consequence, they adopt this low-cost technology, they perfect it. And today they've helped the Russian Federation set up a plant in Tatarstan called Alabuga, where they are manufacturing these drones at the rate of 15 to 20 a day, right? These are very low-cost platforms, and the Russians are surging the production of this platform. So you look at the way technological churning, geopolitics, the modern way of warfighting is actually like the old way of warfighting. Low-cost, very, very easily made platforms like this, which, believe it or not, this platform is today in use by, you heard it, by the Russians, the Iranians, the North Koreans, And very recently, the Americans too, they have got something called the Lucas, which looks exactly like this, which is the low-cost UAS solution. India also has a version of the Jaran. It's called the Harop, which is what the Israelis took and they basically made it into an anti-radiation platform. So this is actually, it's not the future of warfare, it's the present stage of the conflict that we are in. It's cost just about $50,000. It's very cheap. So to give you an idea of the different costs involved here, an artillery shell costs about 50,000 rupees, a 155 shell that's made by the Indian Ordnance Factory. It's one of the cheapest in the world. This one costs about $50,000. And a BrahMos missile, which is the high end of the thing, would cost about 30 crore, 35 crore. So if you want to saturate the enemy's air defenses, you want to saturate his, the country, you want to hit a number of targets together, this is the way forward. So, drone warfare is high-tech, at the same time, it's low-tech. And many countries have gone in for that. So if you see this, the way warfare has progressed in Russia and Ukraine, we have to kind of ask ourselves big questions on this. Now, why I come to it is that the fact is that we have a lot of gaps in our capabilities in India. And all of you are familiar with it. The Air Force does not have enough fighter aircraft. They're asking for more squadrons. The Navy has a shortage in submarines and warships. The Army, of course, has a shortfall in artillery and armored warfare. So my question is that could this not become the interim solution while you're getting into the next level of technology? If you mass produce this in a way that China, North Korea, the Russian Federation are doing it, they're producing it in the tens of thousands. Could we not set up a plant like this to produce these at scale? And I'm sure given the technologies involved, it's a very simple thing. If you look at the design, it's just about, like I said, 11 feet long, about 6 feet wide. It's got a simple propeller. It flies at about 200 kilometers an hour, but it has a range of more than 1,000 kilometers, between 1,000 and 2,000 kilometers, and it carries 50 kilos of explosives. Now this is more or less enough to do what General Shukla and his colleagues would call ordnance on target, right? You fire hundreds of them and some of them will be intercepted, many of them will be intercepted, but some of them will break through the enemy's AD cover and saturate him and hit his targets. This is exactly what we want for the present threats that we are facing on our borders. Pakistan on the left, on your west, and China on the north, right? These are our immediate threats. And instead of going in for super expensive gold-plated technologies that I don't want to get into because my friends in the Air Force would be very worried, to say that could we not look at this as a low-cost option, a low-cost solution, which we can build very quickly in India. And we can build it at scale and we can master it in a way that we have done so many other technologies. Frugal engineering is basically in our DNA. We could do this. The sad part is that we have not even begun, right? We have bought 50 or 60 of them from the Israelis. There are a few companies that are building them, but not enough. We don't have plants of the scale that the Russian Federation has set up. The Iranians certainly have. So, I mean, this was my limited point of talking about, not about so much about the future of warfare, but the present, because everything that we're talking of, you see in the papers, whether it's your fighter squadrons or your warships or your nuclear-powered submarines, are going to come decades from now. And what we need is something that will serve our interests in the short term. So this was just to give you an idea of how technology is matured, and we have to make the choice whether we want to be Russia-Ukraine of 2022 or we want to be Russia-Ukraine of 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sandeep, for those insightful points. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we would go to the round one of the panel discussion. Let me begin with General Shukla. Sir, taking the discussion ahead, sir, following Trump's presidency with aggressive trade policies and transactional geopolitics shaping the world that we see that nations like India, our Bharat, is becoming more assertive in exercising strategic autonomy. How do you see India's role evolving in this multipolar world order, sir?
So now we are moving from technology to geopolitics. So let me tell you that while I speak a lot about technology, If there is one domain I find even more fascinating than technology is geopolitics. Because it is a domain which needs deep study and it is very difficult to get it right. You often get it wrong. And you will get it even wronger, if that is the right word, in the Trump era, because Trump is Trump. So he has complicated geopolitics even more. But before that, I want to make 2 points. You know, Ambassador Trigunayat mentioned Africa. I was surprised. The day Trump put 50% tariffs on Brazil and was haggling with the Africans, what did the Chinese do? This is a point related to strategic agility and geopolitics. Straight away they told Brazil, all the coffee that US doesn't buy from you, we will buy. Look at that. And they told the Africans, I think there are 53 countries in the continent, 50 countries they said 0% tariff. This is strategic thinking. Look at how they look at business strategically. We've heard of startups. I've been following this domain very carefully. So हमारे यहाँ we've done, at least in the defense world, we've done IDEX and Aditi. But it is still, you know, with that L1 culture and all that. You ask the startups how they are struggling with regulation in the MOD. It's a big problem. And I was amazed. Look at how the Chinese do. They handle the startup business. So if you're a good startup in China, your first order will come from defense, even if you have got a commercial civil product. If you are particularly good, I will hold your hand till commercial viability so that you can survive in the market. And this is the key. The third one is what they say, kicker in the tail. That if you are particularly bright, I will handhold you to destroy 5 American startups. No L1, no. What amazes me about the Chinese, I mean, we say they are an autocracy, this, that. They can implement better than us. How are they thinking better than us? Ideation and geostrategic thinking. Why? Because in our country, we just discourage geopolitics. So that strange thing doesn't come. The last person, look at K. Subramaniam, Mr. Jaishankar's father. When I was growing up in the 90s, we used to wait for his article to come in the Times of India. He used to set the parameters of strategic debate. The gentleman who first argued for a chief of defense staff in India was not Army, Navy, Air Force. It was Subramaniam. We need those kind of people. That geostrategic thinking, I mean, it is so important, so I just thought I'll just spend 30 seconds on that. Now let's look at the geopolitics. People say multipolar world. To me, it looks very bipolar. Cold War 2.0 is a contest between China and USA. There are struggling poles, but where are the rest of the poles? And look at the struggle. Now Trump, you know, is considered a maverick, but he and his MAGA team, in my view, have got a very carefully constructed strategy. And I'm coming to that strategy, how geopolitics may unfold. They, in their private studies, have concluded that today USA is no match for China. I'll give you 2 figures, which is from the MAGA camp, Steve Bannon. If you take percentage of, you know, GDP, global GDP in PPP terms, which is a measure of strategic capacity, today China leads 19-16. 19% of global GDP China, 16 USA. And sophisticated estimates tell you non-American, which take into account adverse demographics and a plummeting economy and all, in 2035 it will be 24-14. Trump knows it, MAGA knows it. Look at the state of their military. Their American debt is $37 trillion. Debt servicing is $1 trillion, jo karja hai. And it is more than their defense budget, $975 billion. Any economist will tell you that the moment your debt servicing exceeds your defense budget, you are in trouble. It is the beginning of your decline. So what is MAGA camp doing? And now it's confirmed that leaked strategy paper in Politico, if you study defense budget USA 25-26, they are retreating to their Western hemisphere to repair their economy and heal their military, in my view. And you will see this possibly. They are outsourcing the containment of Russia to Europe. They will not contest USA in Taiwan. If you see the military metrics today in Taiwan, America doesn't have 7 days of precision munitions and missiles. China has a surge capacity of 10,000 cruise missiles a week because the Americans have neglected their military. Why did China unfold their nuclear triad on the Beijing parade? They are telling them that even if we begin to lose the Taiwan contest, these missiles will hit your homeland. What is a transactional Trump going to do? Is he going to risk any city being hit? So the broad conclusion is that they have told the Chinese that Taiwan, no, deeper Western Pacific, yes, line of Japan, South Korea. And it's not stated, but his deal with China is that South Asia, India and China sort it out. So when we come to this question of strategic autonomy, in my view, we should have no romanticism. It is going to be one tiger on a hill. We will have to sort it out with China. And therefore, your generation has to really step up our game in all these aspects. And here just let me make 2 points. There is an ASPE technology tracker. I keep quoting this. 2003 to 2007, America is the world superpower. In all these critical emerging technologies, AI, quantum, military autonomy, this, that, USA leads in 60 out of 65, uncontested. And then China does the diaspora strategy, 1,000 talents plan, which is what I think somebody was talking about it just now, talent, DP was talking. They get all talent, Chinese talent back from the world, Nobel laureates, winners of AM Turing Medal. In consequence, 1723, China leads in 57 out of 65. Have you heard of a more dramatic inversion in technology leadership? The good point is that India leads, is a distant third in 10. Distant third, but 10. Now we need to do this kind of stuff. You have to win the strategic military competition with China. It's not about moving files here and moving files there. This has to get into our civil services, young people like you. Otherwise, we are going to lose this contest with China. Can we pick these 10 technologies and say in 10 years we'll become the lead? Because as somebody was saying, military is just one dimension of the national security challenge. There is technology, diplomacy, talent, all kinds of stuff. So in the geopolitics, we have to step up our game. So that's, the other point I would like to make. And the last point I would like to make is, so what do you do? Look at the modern security architecture. How is it evolving? Israel did what it did, but it was with all US technology being available, from AD to space to this and that and the other. Pakistan gets all this stuff on a platter from China, Baidu, this, that. We say strategic autonomy, but let's be honest. 62, Prime Minister Nehru ended up writing a letter to President Kennedy begging for guns, for aircraft, for pilots to fly the aircraft. Where non-alignment? 1971, were it not for the Indo-Soviet Friendship Treaty, would we be able to have, kept the Chinese away and all? So in my view, strategic autonomy is a good thing in peace. When push comes to shove, it is not so helpful. And in any case, and now let me make this point, my generation suffered from the illusion of transfer of technology. We were stupid idiots. Nobody transfers technology. Let me make one reality to you. The Americans have been doling this out for years. DTTI, Indus X, Seas through the stars. 20 साल से मैंने देख लिए ढेले की technology नहीं दी उन्होंने. The Russians are worse, in my view. I don't imagine. The PLA has been resourced by the Russians in the first phase. In the second phase, they are so grateful to what the Chinese did in Ukraine. They are giving them 5th, 6th generation aircraft engines technology. They are giving them quieter submarines technology, missilery. They're not giving it to us. So our problem is how to align by the way, strategic economy in many other ways is good. But how do we align strategic autonomy, our needs of technology partnership and operational poise? Who's our technology partner? We need one. Now, these are the issues that we have to grapple with. My private conclusion is nobody will give it to you. Therefore, Atmanirbharta in defense is the only way. And in retrospect, I think the wisest decision this Prime Minister took was Atmanirbharta in defense. And the last point I'd like to make, I think DP was making this point, the next phase of Atmanirbharta in defense is only going to come from the private sector and startups. There are startups who've done so well, they've got orders from US Stratcom, Spacecom, this, that, and the other. The private sector has to step up its game. And this just last one figure I'll give you. USA spends $975 billion on R&D, science R&D. $700 billion comes from the private sector. 700. China, 540 for $5 billion. Their SOEs, state-owned enterprises, are smarter than our private sector, at least more efficient. Our private sector, not even $20 billion. Does it tell you where we will be 20 years from now? So if we are serious about national security, it is not whole of government, it is beyond government. It has to be everybody, including the private sector, stepping up its games. So these are, the connections I draw from geopolitics to strategic autonomy and what we must do to strengthen our national security.
Thank you, sir. Indeed, we all are, in fact, these are very interesting points for the students community who are here. What General Shukla has highlighted about the role of startups, and if we really want to become Viksit Bharat, sir, these are the stakeholders who are sitting in front of us. In 2047, they will have a huge role to play. Moving on to Ambassador Trigunayat. Sir, building on that, you have engaged deeply with the global diplomacy. With shifting alliances, US-China, I should say, rivalry, and India's growing partnerships in the Indo-Pacific, how can India balance the power politics while safeguarding its autonomy?
Well, I fully agree with what General Shukla has said, and in a way he has shown the mirror. So that's basically the beginning point. But I tell you one thing, and this is my conviction, I may be wrong eventually. India has a great experience of leveraging itself with all the major powers if it can. On the other hand, our friends Pakistanis have a tremendous capacity and capability of encashing their nuisance value because they are a rentier state. So there are two things that we need to keep in mind. How? We have, after the independence, we were weak, absolutely. Any country that is exploited for 200 years, 300 years will become weaker because it's exploited. But from there on, you had no choice because you were standing. And even when you were so weak, you were a voice in the international community because you took position which was based on certain morality, certain principles. So what I see today and how I define India's foreign policy, and it will apply, strategic autonomy by itself is a certain choice that you make in your own national interest. But then today, strategic autonomy is also combined with something called multi-alignments. So if we merely talk of strategic autonomy, this is half the truth. It does not preclude your collaboration with the rest of the world, wherever it is possible for us to collaborate. Why is it that Chinese are happy with us remaining a strategic autonomy? Because they think that this is a country that stands up to us, has stood up to us, is going very fast with a very different kind of a political architecture. So it's best that it is not a friend with the Americans or is not in the American camp. Russians are happy with the same reason. Soviets respected us for this same reason. Because see, today you are the largest, most populous country in the world. And therefore, this itself carries such a big weight for you. It's how we have messed up in our policies to some extent in the past, but we must pick up. And we cannot fight our wars on the basis of our friendships with A, B, C countries. It's not possible. You have to fight your own wars, whether this is a physical war, whether it is a space war, whether it is a cyber war, anything. So you have to create. And we have been empowering rest of the world. Be it NASA, be it anywhere in science, Indian scientists are everywhere. Why don't we plug with them? And there is a program that Prime Minister has launched, which is working quite well. There are 8,500 projects. But we need to invest something which we have not done and forgot our past as well. And that was R&D. And you rightly mentioned, sir. We have been hoping that the worst will not come. That's something, despite having fought so many wars and being challenged by all our neighbors here. Today that's increasing. So we need to work with them now. Americans, of course, Trump is an aberration in a certain way. But it is not that, and as I said earlier, I think that what Trump is doing to us or has done to us so far is something good for us. We should not look at it in a negative manner. Because, he will have realized his mistakes when it hits him. Today he is looking, as was mentioned by General Shukla also, to conserve their energy so that they can fight with China. I mean, that China and US contestation is real. And it is going to eventually blow out. What do the Chinese and the Indians want in the process? India and China both want 20 years of peace. That 20 years of peace is very difficult to be given to you. Because if China gets 20 years of peace, by any yardstick, it will beat the West. West is in decline. I mean, you remember that the Chinese economy in 1980 was 1/10 of the whole of Europe. And today equal to Europe. Exactly, 17-18% of the global wealth. India gradually is coming out of it. We are not so dependent on the rest of the world in many ways, and that is also our strength. I mean, I must say that Indo-Pacific remains a major theater. We'll see how the next US government, when it comes after this, whether it is a Republican or the same deep state comes to play, then they will refocus on Indo-Pacific. But today they are trying to fight their battles, and rather attention has been withdrawn, frankly, from the Indo-Pacific towards the European theaters, towards Latin America, their background. And that's where they are going to be busy in more. But so this also will provide us time. Now, Cold War 2.0 is going to be a reality. It is a reality already, but it will be different from Cold War 1.0. It will be geopolitically, in my view, a Cold War 2.0 will be very similar to the previous scenario. But with the difference will be that you will have many big economic actors who will be playing a geo-economic game in a different sense. Earlier, it was all together. Geopolitics, heft with each one was very much critically divided. But today, this is what we are going to look. You see, really, de-dollarization is happening in real time. India itself has signed 20-25 agreements with different countries to use its own currency. We have told the BRICS countries that we are going to transact with you in our own currency. What is it? It's an autonomy that you are playing around with because you are calibrating. And you have friendships. It's not that today European Union, President Trump tried to force them to impose 100% tariff on you. They refused. China says we are ready to buy your stuff. Russia says that you sell it to us. Many other countries are doing it because they don't want you to align in certain cases. And that is what I feel that in case, and today it's not only India. You see the Middle East, which I follow very closely. All the countries in the Middle East, they have seen what happens with the US security when you have a security cover. Since the Russia-Ukraine war, they are exercising their strategic autonomy. They may have condemned the Russian aggression, but they continue to transact with Russia and have become the conduit for the Russians. UAE today is the major player in the game, very smart. So what is happening? If you talk to everybody, they respect India, they want to align with India. And what you have done during the pandemic, actually, I must say, it was a great diplomatic achievement in keeping with your Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. That has earned us tremendous goodwill in the world and credibility in the world. And that is something that we need to build upon. And therefore, tomorrow, if it happens, so I have my theory that there will be a Cold War 2.0, there will be two blocks, and India can lead a bloc of the nations for a strategic autonomy.
Thank you, sir, for that very interesting perspective, especially on Middle East, what you said. Moving to General Pandey. Sir, you have a lot of experience on ground. My query to you is, now, do you believe, sir, India's operational doctrines and preparedness reflect our this new geopolitical reality, what we are discussing about?
So, what Colonel Patil has done, he's kept the students who are appearing for the test, who are sitting here, 4 of us, under test, under a lot of pressure and tension. कौन सा क्वेश्चन किसके पास आएगा ये पता नहीं, उसके जवाब हमें पता नहीं है, right? So we are not being given, don't think that we have been given questions, be ready, we'll ask you. We are just, I was so tense कि अब मुझसे क्या पूछा जाएगा. And then he starts by saying that, with your practical experience, so now you think that you know, actually you don't know, right? Okay, let me just talk a couple of things before I come to the question proper. What is so-called boon of our country was the steel fabric, which was the government driven on the bureaucracy and stuff like that, was our strength. When things were not moving fast, the steel frame has now become our biggest challenge. Students like you spend 4 to 5 very, very critical years spending, to crack the examination to become bureaucrats. Eventually, everybody states publicly, and I've been in those, we have been there, for serving the nation. But the truth is power and money and self. Very rarely it's about. And the moment you join thereafter, your hands are so tight that you can't do much because the steel frame is too strong. There is a need to have a much more flexible, better, resilient, adaptive structure to come in place. Because in a fast-moving world, what is the advantage with China? They break down structures, create structures. They create new structures. They started going on to one path of military modernization, and they realized that these structures may not function because the new technologies come. We need to just remove these structures and create one. For us to even create one, have an addition of a person in our organization, the files will get bogged down, that it will never happen. Somewhere we need this issue. The second is, we are missing out the patriots in the country. The patriots are not the ones who are in the government service. Government service people are for their job. The patriots are who are outside the government service because they actually care. Somewhere we are not investing in them. And we need ways and means to actually involve. So what General Shukla said also, that in Ukraine or in America today, you just pick up civilians who are absolutely great and get them uniform. Okay, we'll beat the Official Secret Act. Now today he is wearing uniform. He is now coming with AI, the latest system to be in place. And thereafter, they start operating in the government as a part of military force. And that is where our operational doctrine is lacking. So firstly, did we have one? Do we have one? And once that is made, is it going to last the next government or the next set of bureaucracy? Is it going to empower and enable capabilities and capacities? Because you may have any strategic doctrine, any operational doctrine, you may have a national security strategy. It needs to be powered with commitment, but more importantly by money. So you may want to have 3 to 4 aircraft carriers. You may want to have 44 squadrons of the 5th and 6th generation fighters. And oh, by the way, now Sandeep Unithan has come and said that in 2022, Ukraine was something else. In 2023, the war-fighting scenario was different. And in 2024, the war-fighting scenario has shifted to drones. And in 2026, it is going to be totally different. When you have a doctrine which is stringent, which is not flexible, which is also not capacity and capability based, then what will happen is that the wars will come and go, and you will remain a second world war force which we technically, like everybody will say that we are highly modern, but actually we aren't modern. We are modern enough to fight a war with Pakistan with lesser mortals, but to fight a modern warfare, a modern conflict, we're actually not there. Let's take one simple strand. Where is our strategic communication part? Right? Do we have one today? Do we have a structure in place? Do we require a doctrine to be in place to have it? Everybody from the Prime Minister down to a chaiwala on the street knows that we need to have narrative not only for the external world, but also to keep our own people on our side. So that some Arundhati Roy should not start making a new historical context for our country. Do we have one? You know the answer, and I would also know the answer. So my recommendation will be that rather than trying to focus on an operation doctrine, which is equal to your capacity or your force structure and everything, I think we must invest on two very, very important facets. We need to have an ecosystem in which imagination, innovation, inventions become part of it. American strategic national security strategy, there are in generally two parts. One is the public part which articulates the geopolitical scenario. But the one which is hidden is only talking of investment in R&D in multi-layered stuff which is happening, and General Shukla has articulated about those parts very clearly, and I don't want to get into it. So we need to invest our capabilities to develop our capabilities, and that capability can only develop when you have an ecosystem of research and development. You need to have universities. Along with the universities, you need to have a private-public partnership, industrial complexes, where rather than going for a government job and wasting 4 to 5 very critical years of all our engineers, they don't desire to become part of the government. They start investing their brain and time onto invention and innovation, which will take them far more further rather than wasting time for getting into it. So I think that maybe operational doctrines are very, very smaller subset in a national security ecosystem and in the environment. So this is a environment which I will like to have, wherein businesses invest money for R&D. Who's driving American modernization program? They are the best business people in the world. The Indians are running their inventions. The Russians are doing, the Chinese are doing. Are there any truly Americans who are working into R&D labs? Hardly any. You go to Silicon Valley, you throw a stone, it is 90% going to land on the head of some brown guy from India who's punching away their innovations and inventions. So we need to create a scenario here that doesn't happen, and even if it happens, they should learn like the Chinese do, and there is a compulsion for them to fall back to the country, to give back to the country, right? And we require a very, very flexible, evolving system to be in place rather than a very, very strong steel frame which is not flexible to take on the new realities which are going to happen. And the pace of the conflict, the type of conflict which is going to happen will change much more faster. We are just seeing only an annual shift and change. We are going to see it every 6 months, and thereafter we'll find after about a decade, it will be virtually on a monthly basis that you will have new systems coming into place, right?
Thank you, sir. That was a very interesting point. In fact, invest in the ecosystem where imagination is more, the students, the startups, they should more focus on something innovative thing rather than just going behind, jobs. Most important takeaway, I should say, from these deliberations which we are doing. On the similar lines, Mr. Sandeep, you started your comments with the Kamikaze drone that you highlighted about the Ukraine war. I would like to ask you, as a defense analyst, from the lens of media and strategic narrative, how do you see India projecting its military and geopolitical assertiveness both at home and abroad?
Well, thank you. Well, how India projects that is in two ways. One is, of course, in deed, and the other is in word. And as General Pandey was talking about the out-of-syllabus questions that we were worried whether they would be out-of-syllabus questions, I want to tell you about one out-of-syllabus question that was put to General Asim, now Field Marshal Asim Munir, on the 10th of May 2025, where they thought that it was going to be like, just business as usual. They fired some missiles, we'll fire some more. Our Air Force will get into a dogfight with them. But what happened on the 10th of May is very interesting, and I want to tell all of you this because I think we have not told people enough about the kind of impact it has had on Pakistan. And this is taking forward from your point about how India projects power. And I think what happened on the 10th of May, in 30 minutes, was, what happened, right? The Indian Air Force launched a volley of BrahMos missiles at all the Pakistani air bases, radar sites, all of those things. They were hit. Several air bases were rendered non-operational. The entire Pakistan Air Force withdrew to their depth bases because all the frontline air bases, starting from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir right down to Sindh, were affected, right? Now, what this has done to the mind of the Pakistan military is very interesting, and I had a discussion with one of General Shukla's dear friends, General Shankar, recently, to find out why the Pakistanis were so rattled that they immediately dialed the White House and said, please help us, please save us. Is that, Pakistan's nuclear vectors are two. They have air-launched bombs, which are kept in these special weapons storage sites, for which the aircraft have to be there near the Chaklala and Sargoda, and then the bombs are mated under that and they take off. And the other is the TELs, the Transporter Erector Launcher, basically, which is a missile on an 8x8 multi-wheeled vehicle. So these are the two vectors that they have. What happened on the 10th of May is that because the Air Force withdrew from all their frontline bases, that first rung of that vector was disrupted, right? They had no way of taking their nuclear weapons under aircraft. That was disrupted. And because there were no aircraft in the frontline bases, all their TELs, which are your Hataf and the Gohris and the Shaheens, which go on these 8x8 vehicles, those could not emerge because you didn't have air cover, right? So this is what we did basically in the 30 minutes. It's unprecedented, the kind of attacks that we carried out in that short span of time. And of course, what followed 2 days later was the Prime Minister signaling that this entire policy of nuclear weapons-enabled terrorism has reached its sell-by date, right? We have called the bluff. There is no difference between state actors and non-state actors. So I think these are very, very significant landmark statements and achievements that have come out. But unfortunately, what has happened is that the way it has played out in the international media, that leaves a lot to be desired. The narrative building, the narrative warfare that we waged, I think left a lot to be desired, because how it played out in the global media, how it played out in the world capitals, was that Pakistan had fought India to a standstill, So while we talk about the traditional 5 dimensions of warfare, land, sea, air, space and cyber, in Operation Sindoor you saw a 6th dimension of conflict. That was the narrative warfare. And that is where I think the Pakistanis had invested over several years. They had put their people in key media organizations and they created this entire narrative that they had trumped India somehow in that 88-hour war, right? So I think that was a watershed moment for us. I think, and that kind of answers your question, that while we carried out this military action, which was astounding, we have not crossed and carried out these kind of attacks against Pakistan since 1971. But even now, if you ask people in India, if you ask, if you talk to people generally across the world also, their only question is, kitne aircraft gire, So we have not been able to go beyond that particular narrative, which the Pakistanis have managed to convey very successfully. I think, so it's a big lesson for us in terms of narrative warfare. So I think when you project power, hard power we are very good at, right? I mean, you've just heard it from General Pandey, General Shukla. They are literally, they've commanded some of the finest units in the country, and they have led the kind of operations that you see today. What Operation Sindoor is a culmination of those kind of operations. Hard power, very good at, but it is the narrative warfare that I think we have a lot to learn from. We need to invest more in these kind of areas because of the kind of rise of social media, right? Everybody today has a smartphone in their hands, and they're free to, make their opinions and create groups and project those opinions across the world. So that I think was one very big learning for us. And while we have, given out of syllabus questions to the dictator across the border, there are several questions that we must ask ourselves, what we must do better. And I think I'm waiting to hear from General Pandey, because he has spearheaded the ADGPI, which is a fantastic organization that the army set up after learning from the lessons of the Kargil War of 1999, right? Narrative warfare, the army learnt in 99, and today you have a very capable organization under the Indian Army. But this needs to be done at a much bigger level, at a national level as well. Thanks.
Of course, perception management forms very important part these days. What Mr. Sandeep was saying was the narrative warfare. We all have heard him. I am really running short of time. We had to wind up by 6. But with the permission of the panel, may I request, sir, if we can take very short 2 or 3 questions. I would request, there would be a lot of hands, I know. Introduce yourself, keep the questions very short. That is my request. Madam, here in the first row.
Good evening, everyone. It was nice listening to you all. I'm Dr. Rukmini from School of Humanities Social Sciences, Sarda University. So my question is to Ambassador Anil. Sir, strategic autonomy is necessary, but I would like to know from you that in the contemporary scenario, do you think India is in the position to romanticize strategic autonomy? Thank you.
This is not romanticizing. This is a reality check. Which country has become greater by, basically when you become, we don't think in terms of alliances in the first place. The countries that we are looking to be part of it, have relationship with them, they only think in terms of an alliance. Alliance means you are surrendering your sovereignty. You see what is happening across transatlantic alliance today. General Shukla also mentioned about what is being done. You look at what kind of threats they are giving to the, he says that this will be Panama, I will take over, or I'll take over, can make Canada into 51st state if you don't like it. So when the power differential is so big, and what are you expecting from them? Do you think that today they are selling everything? Qatar is a non-NATO ally, right? They have helped United States so much in every typical war that has happened in the recent past. When the Israelis attacked them, now the Americans have told you can't use our weapon systems which we have sold you. They have bought hundreds of billions of dollars of weapon systems from them. So that's where your strategic autonomy and your basically self-reliance, Atmanirbharta, that is what is going to come into hand. And look at, none of these countries have helped anybody. Russia goes and is also strangulating the Ukrainians. You think that, could you ever imagine this could happen? No. How the Ukrainians are suffering today? They are suffering because they just surrendered themselves to the Europeans and the Americans. So you want to become Ukraine, then it is up to you. That's something. But I feel that we need to have, and civilizational states can never, especially the kind of India, the kind of thinking we have, we can never be subservient to anybody. China doesn't believe in alliances. It believes in dependencies. And it creates those dependencies. So you have to create that stakeholdership of the countries. And that's what India is trying to do, I guess.
Any question from the students, youngsters? Yeah, here. Pooja, the one there. Introduce yourself and a very short question.
I am Midhun Prakash, second year Pol Science student from BrahMos College. My question is to General Devendra Pratap Pandey, sir. You have said about that India as a nation, or we lack the kind of national pride or national character, unlike other nations. What might be the reasons and how we can solve that?
So I think firstly, it is last about, I'll just say about 1,000 years, in which certain degree of fissures were already existing in terms of regions, religions, part of the country and all. And thereafter, last about 300 to 400 years, we have been actually deliberately fractured to tell that your epics, your history, your books were not good enough. And then, in last about 100, 150 years before the Britishers left, we had a system of education in which they wanted people to work for them, and therefore our education system was changed accordingly. And when you change a DNA for virtually about 100, 150 years, thought process, and which continues even after independence, then what happens is that we want to find work in the rest of the world. Nobody wants to join a government service. It is only in the Indian subcontinent where everybody wants to take a government service. Everywhere, free entrepreneurship is what is expected and desired, right? When you work for a government is something, or you're out of the work kind of a chap, and therefore you're useless and you're going. The best brains are coming here not to work actually for the government. The best brain should be outside the government to be working for the country. So I think that is one. And second, what has happened is, in last about 70 years or something, some degree of a socialism kind of a thought process which has come. If I don't work, I must yet be empowered because the government was not able to give me work. Second is, if I protest, which was a pre-independent system, I will become much more important and powerful. So today, the person who throws a stone and is a leader, who is an anti-government leader or anti-country leader, becomes far more powerful. The strengths of democracy, freedom of speech, empowerment, rights of variety of types, have also been exploited by the people who want to become empowered, and also from the external forces to ensure that our minds continue to remain divided. So the fault lines always existed. They have been only widened and they have been cemented over a period of time. The last is that when you draw your moorings, your inspirations, not from your history of a civilization, not from your father, not from your parents, not from your mother, from your soil, from where you come from. So when you are a person from Bihar speaking in a Bhojpuri tinge, right, English, you'll be always laughed at. You're not anglicized. But when you go to Germany, and when you're speaking English in a German tinge, nobody dislikes you. You go to America, variety of people speak different language, dialects and strains. Everybody is restricted. Somewhere we are drawing our moorings from West. Somebody is drawing from ideological moorings from communism and socialism, which is all outside stuff. And then again the religious moorings. Where are your own moorings? They have been destroyed. How can it be done? I'll just give a very simple example. In Kashmir, we went through a Tiranga movement, right? Every person, if you tell them to carry a Pakistani flag, they will fall in love with Pakistani flag. But if you allow them to carry the national flag, they'll fall into national flag. So today there is if you see the videos and everything, people love carrying Tiranga. It just requires an initiative, and somewhere we must use the narratives to have a positive mindset, to bind us together. We need to write new stories, appropriate stories. America has got 200 years of stories to tell. We got 5,000 years of stories to tell, to be proud of. I think we need to tell those stories. Right.
Keep it short.
नमस्ते सर, मेरा नाम अजीत कुमार है, मैं ब्यूरोक्रेसी से हूँ, मैं आई एम IRS ऑफिसर। सर यहाँ पे बात हुई चाइना से तुलना करने की, चाइना ने अपने आप को खास सर्टेन वे में मॉडल किया, और एक बात हुई नेशनलिज्म की, राष्ट्रीय गर्व और इन सब चीज़ों की। मेरा प्रश्न यह है, चाइना ने अपने नेशनलिज्म को मॉडल किया दो स्टोरीज़ के बेस पे, एक हान आइडेंटिटी एंड 100 years ऑफ ह्यूमिलिएशन। हम लोग Indian government or society, we are also trying to build a narrative. 1000 years of humiliation and then Hindutva identity or Bharatiya identity. जब हम 1000 ईयर ऑफ ह्यूमिलिएशन की बात करते हैं तो 20% इंडियंस को मैनिपुलेट किया जाता है, वो डिफेंसिव हो जाते हैं। जब हान आइडेंटिटी की बात चाइना में होती है, हमारे यहाँ भारतीय आइडेंटिटी कहने को बहुत अच्छी बात है, लेकिन वो आइडेंटिटी है क्या? मैं ब्यूरोक्रेसी में हूँ, मैं जानता हूँ हर कास्ट ने अपना अपना एक ग्रुप बना रखा है, व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप। तो बात कहने को तो
keep it short.
नहीं, बस मेरा प्रश्न यही है, प्रश्न पांडे सर से मेरा प्रश्न है कि नेशनलिज्म या एक नेशनल आइडेंटिटी या नैरेटिव की बात आपने की, उसको बिल्ड करना है। रियलिटी से कट करके हम एक सही राष्ट्रीय नैरेटिव बिल्ड कर सकते हैं क्या? इसकी कोई गुंजाइश है? मुझे तो नहीं लगती। मैं आपसे जानना चाहता हूँ सर।
देखिए, मैं बड़ा ना पॉजिटिविज्म में बिलीव करता हूँ, ठीक है। इन स्पाइट ऑफ एवरीथिंग, राइट, हम कितना भी अपने देश को बुरा कह लें, हम जो 80 साल के अंदर कर पाए हैं, जहाँ से निकले, वी हैव कम आउट फ्रॉम द एशेस विच वर लेफ्ट, राइट, वी हैव स्टिल कम फार हेड। इंडियन माइंड ऑफ इनोवेशन, इमेजिनेशन is DNA imprinted. We survive, right? The only part is वो जो जुगाड़ है, हम शॉर्टकट्स के लिए यूज़ कर रहे हैं। हम जिस दिन इस जुगाड़ को लंबी दूरी के लिए चलाएंगे तो अच्छा हो जाएगा। जो आप ये छोटे छोटे ग्रुप्स की बात कर रही हैं, अगेन आई विल गिव एन एग्जांपल। अगेन कश्मीर का मैं आपको बड़ा समझ, बिकॉज कश्मीर से ज़्यादा फ्रैक्चर्ड हमारे देश से कोई जगह नहीं है। जो पिछले 100 साल के साथ में उनको ये बताया जा रहा था कि आप अलग हो, आपका धर्म अलग है, आपको कहीं और होना चाहिए, आपको डिस्टिंक्ट होना चाहिए, बट उसके अंदर भी एक यूथ का तबका है जो वो भारत के साथ एसोसिएट करता है। मगर आप उसके हाथ में अगर तिरंगा जाने ही नहीं दोगे, हर रोज़ बंद करोगे और उनको बोलोगे कि बाहर नहीं निकलेगा, तो नेचुरली हमारे देश के अंदर सिर्फ एक कमी है, जो आपके साथ है हम उसको दिखाते हैं, हमारे साथ जो नहीं है हम उसकी पूजा करते हैं, उसको बनाने की कोशिश करते हैं। Somewhere where you start having a higher pedestal, higher purpose in life, a flag. हमारे यहाँ पे देश में हमारा तिरंगा एक बहुत मोटिवेशनल फैक्टर है, राइट? वो जो 20 है, आप उनको धमकाइए मत, 20% को। आप उनको ये देखिए कि आपके साथ में चलना है। When you एक बहुत अच्छी बात जो बाकी देशों के अंदर है, वो जो सच्चाई है उसको दबाते नहीं। हमारे यहाँ हम सच्चाई को दबा देते हैं, हम आँख बंद कर देते हैं। When you open that wound, then it heals. When you cover that wound, only gangrene sets in, right? I am a firm believer कि मेरे और आपके साथ में गुस्सा हुआ, नाराज़गी है, हमें बात करनी चाहिए, वो सुलझेगा। मगर हम उसको दबाएंगे तो वो प्रेशर कुकर बन के एक गलत समय पे निकलेगा। Let that pressure cooker between the societies, between the caste, between the religious groups not happen. We must have conversations. When you have conversations, you realize that we all belong to one DNA stream and we are not like anywhere else. जिसको आप पूछते हो बाहर से, वो आपको पैसे के बल पे अपने पर्पस से खरीदता है, मगर आपके माँ बाप और आपकी हिस्ट्री आपको अपने पर्पस से नहीं खरीदती, बिकॉज आपको इसलिए प्यार करती है क्योंकि आप इस धरती के हो। जब आप इस चीज़ के बारे में बात करोगे तो आई थिंक पॉवर्टी, रिचनेस, गैप्स, फॉल्ट लाइन्स विल गेट ओवर इट। इज़ नॉट एन ईजी सर्विस। मैं तो फौजी हूँ, हुक्म का बाशिंदा हूँ, ठीक है, बट मैंने ये चीज़ें प्रैक्टिस करी हैं और मुझे मालूम है कि लोग साथ चलते हैं। मेरे आज जो फॉलोअर्स हैं इंस्टाग्राम और ट्विटर के ऊपर, कश्मीरी ज़्यादा हैं, और वो हर तिरंगे के ऊपर जो उनके थम्स अप आते हैं, जो उनकी स्टोरीज आती है, वो ये नहीं दिखाते कि वो उस 20% का हिस्सा हैं, वो ये बताते हैं कि वो भारत का हैं और भारत का हिस्सा बनना चाहते हैं, और मैं कुछ नहीं कर सकता उनके लिए। ठीक है,
Thank you, sir. Ambassador Anil also had the point on the similar questions.
See, this is such an interesting question that I also wanted to pitch in. एक जो पांडे साहब ने बोला, that's one way of looking at it. See, why do we keep quoting the Chinese? 62, our GDP was just a little lesser than Chinese. Per capita GDP was higher. We took one wrong turn in national security and see what happened. In the 80s, we were again similarly poised. So one explanation could be this. Let me give you another explanation. How have they done their ideation? Right from the 60s to the external world, they said peaceful rise. China's rise will be peaceful. To their own military officers, their bureaucrats and the party chaps, they said 100-year marathon. 100-year मैराथन क्या था? चाइना को बीट करना है. So let me illustrate this with one example. 1950, Mao stands on the shores of eastern China and says Taiwan is 100 kilometers, 3 रात में हो जाएगा. And the Americans send in the 7th Fleet. Mao backs off. 58 में दोबारा कोशिश करते हैं. This time the Americans threaten them with a nuclear war. Again Mao has to back off. 1995 में, when another Taiwan crisis they attempt, this time Clinton sends 2 aircraft carriers. They back off. तो जो 100-year humiliation है उससे एक और तार जोड़ते हैं. कहते हैं अभी फर्स्ट आइलैंड चेन में अमेरिकन्स आ नहीं पाएंगे. A2AD. They invest in all this technology and all that. Today हालत ये है, Admiral Paparo says that my aircraft carriers could not enter the first island chain. 2022 में उनकी जो exercises थी, they were 2 brigades. Today they are 42 brigades. 2022 में amphibious force they committed 1/3. Today it is 2/3. And now they ask the questions, do you want Americans, do you want to fight? What will Trump say? No point. तो ये जो वो काबिलियत, कैपेसिटीज, टैलेंट के बेसिस में करते हैं, हम क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे हैं? अगर हमने किया होता तो हमारी बात हो रही होती, चाइनीज़ की बात क्यों नहीं हो रही? सो वी हैव टू बी ऑनेस्ट. एंड नाउ आई मेक 2 points. Say I'm in the UPSC now. The civil servants, there is nothing wrong. There is something in the civil service ecosystem which makes a chap over the years orderless, colorless, tasteless. वो क्यों हो रहा है? That we have to ask. When they come, I interview them. They are the brightest on the earth. कुछ हो जाता है हमारे सिस्टम में. फौज में ये कम हो रहा है, so we are a little better off. Civil services में ज़्यादा हो रहा है. Those are the issues. This is the centenary year of UPSC and we are looking at civil service reform. But the point that he makes is, देखिए आपने सारा दारोमदार हर चीज़ civil service को दे रखा है. So they have to be the best. In national security, they have to understand it's not about moving files, it's about beating the competition. तो ये बातें हैं. The last point I'd like to make is, सी बात हम कर रहे हैं कि narratives वगैरह. Look at one point that the Chinese have cashed in. It is talent. प्रतिभा, हमको ये मानना पड़ेगा. Are there any ITians here? Okay. I thought IT was a great brand. After I have come to UPSC, I find it amazing that IIT Kanpur, IIT Bombay graduates, postgraduates come for interview of sub-inspector CBI. This is what IITs were created for. मैं पूछता हूँ यहाँ कि सर 9 से 5 है, घर के पास है. What kind of answers are these? So how each brand has to look within, even the armed forces. And we have to see honestly कि हमारी क्या बात है. Kishore Mehbubani makes a point about talent. He says if the Indians in India allowed to attain 25% of the productivity of their Indian counterparts in USA, Satya Nadella, ये वगैरह, our GDP will be $25 trillion. Our ecosystem, there is something wrong, that we don't encourage talent, we don't sustain talent. So, जो पांडे जी ने कही, it's one kind of argument. Also consider what I am saying. In the Indo-Sino-Indian context, and just 2 quick last points I'll make. President Xi is today the boss of China. He got entry into the Chinese Communist Party on his 11th attempt. 10 times he was rejected. China may be an autocracy, but it is a meritocracy. If you are a girl in China, जैसे हमारे यहाँ civil service is the great equalizer, their membership of the Communist Party is the big equalizer. You get into it and your life changes. Only 2 girls from the high school system in China every year get into the civil service. Their innovation, the competition between the mayor of Beijing and the mayor of Shanghai is so tough that 100 startups will get killed before that one BYD survives or one Xiaomi survives. So ये जो पहलू हैं China के, we have to see very honestly, because today the world is quoting China. That's why we have to see this up.
देखिए मैं तो दूसरे तरह से देख रहा हूँ इसको. देखिए मैं इस चीज़ को, भारत की क्या शक्ति है बेसिकली, वो है डाइवर्सिटी. तो आप जो क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं कि भाई हर एक जाति का अपना एक ग्रुप है, वो कंफर्ट लेवल है. शादी ब्याह में ये सब एक इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज चीज़ है जो चेंज हो रही है। तो डाइवर्सिटी आपकी कोई वीकनेस नहीं है, ये आपकी स्ट्रेंथ है। इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग मैंने खुद अपनी सर्विस में देखा है कि मैं आपको बताऊं कि किस तरह से भारत के बारे में देखिए आप। पहले हम जाते थे कहीं रिसेप्शंस में, तो हर आदमी अमेरिकन एम्बेसडर, ब्रिटिश एम्बेसडर के पीछे भागता था। बाय द टाइम आई completed my service in 2016, I tell you this. Every place that we went to, the Chinese and Indian ambassadors were sought after for discussions. They will come to you all the time. That shows that the country has reached some place. And I'm telling you from the real thing. दूसरी चीज़ मैंने आपको बोला कि आप पहले बात कर रहे थे एक्चुअली कि अमेरिका में फॉर एग्जांपल हमारे 4 मिलियन से ज़्यादा इंडियंस हैं, इंडियन ओरिजिन के लोग हैं, काफ़ी सक्सेसफुल हैं और बहुत सक्सेस काम भी कर रहे हैं। वहाँ पर हज़ारों एसोसिएशन हैं, 400 तो कम से कम मुझे पता है। लेकिन आप एक चीज़ देखिए कि मैंने जब हमारा इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म शुरू हुए 91 के बाद, तब से लेकर के अब तक जो भारत की प्रोग्रेस हुई है, पहले हर आदमी कहता मैं उड़िया हूँ, मैं बिहारी हूँ, मैं फलाना हूँ, ढमकाना हूँ। टुडे आई एम इंडियन। यू सी द थिंग इज़ हाउ यू फील प्राउड ऑफ योर कंट्री। तब आपको आती है ये बात कि मैं हाँ भारतीय हूँ। आज आप जाएंगे बाहर में, द मोमेंट एज एन इंडियन डिप्लोमेट व्हेन आई गो आउट एंड आई से इट्स वेरी डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ एन ऑरा ऑल टुगेदर। वो एक इंडियननेस है। दूसरी चीज़ आप देखिए, मालदीव्स के साथ हमारे जरा से रिलेशन ख़राब हुए, हिंदुस्तान का हर आदमी उसके अगेंस्ट हो गया। 30% उनकी GDP का जो है वो दे केम ऑन देयर नीज। टर्की के साथ में हुआ, USA के साथ फॉर एग्जांपल 37% of our people stopped going to the US. Their visa applications went down. 30-40% students this year are going to be less to the United States, seeing how you treated India, how you abused India. So this is Indian unity, and this is going to be, in my view, depend on the youth, of course. Today you are not vertically divided into a caste or something. I never knew next door neighbor was a Muslim or a Hindu. I mean, I personally felt during the of Sindoor and after narrative building की बात हो रही है, the most impressive person for me was Owaisi. The way he contrasted and lambasted Pakistan, I don't think any Indian leader could have done that way. He was your spokesman, right? So we should not think that diversity is negative. That's our strength. We need to build upon it. Each one for the other one. That's how the process.
खराब हो रहा है शायद ये। अच्छा इट्स ओके। क्योंकि चाइना की बार बार बात हो रही है और उसकी अकम्पलिशमेंट की बात हो रही है, आई जस्ट वांट टू रिमाइंड एवरीबॉडी, चाइना स्टार्टेड एज द बिगेस्ट थ्रेट टू द IPR. चाइना ने कुछ नहीं बनाया था, चाइना ने ग्लोबली जो बनी हुई चीज़ें थी उनको टीपना सीखा पहले। हम सबको ध्यान है कि जब ये IPR का कॉन्सेप्ट आया था, चाइना की वजह से आया था, बिकॉज योर इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी वॉज गेटिंग वायलेटेड बाय चाइना. बट लुक व्हाट चाइना डिड, आपसे सीखा, दे वर इंटेलिजेंट इनफ कि भाई ये टीपो, सारी चीज़ें कॉपी करो, पैसे लग नहीं रहे इसलिए चीप भी हो गए. वहाँ से चालू होके देन दे इन्वेस्टेड एंड दैट्स हाउ दे केम. तो ब्लाइंडली चाइना की स्टोरी जो है उसको थोड़ा सा आई थिंक उसकी रियलिटीज़ को सर
कोई चाइना जाके रहना चाहेगा इसमें से? पाकिस्तान में इतना पैसा लगा रहे हैं उसके ऊपर, नॉट वन पाकिस्तानी जनरल वांट्स टू स्टे.
वो वहाँ पे जो करप्शन है चाइना पाकिस्तान के जनरल्स की ना, उसके बाद कौन चाइना में जाके अपना करे. एक क्योंकि कारगिल युद्ध की बात आई तो एक एनेक्डोटल स्टोरी है विच आई मस्ट शेयर. द कैबिनेट इन विच दिस वाज डिसाइडेड कि भाई इस तरह से वो घुसाए हैं एंड वी हैव टू डू समथिंग, तो उसमें वन ऑफ द मिनिस्टर सेड war has to be fought on two fronts. One is the actual war which will take place in Kargil, the other is the information war. The information war is critical, and what we started as champions of the information war, somewhere down the line we lost this war this time. This is very, very strange. As I say, there are just two ways of spreading light. One is be the candle or be the mirror. अनफॉर्चुनेट पार्ट ये है कि हर जगह मेरिटोक्रेसी, एक्सीलेंस पे इन्वेस्टमेंट है, हमारे यहाँ मीडियोक्रिटी पे इन्वेस्टमेंट है. सो मैं आपसे इसलिए कह रहा हूँ क्योंकि आपने एक बड़ा बेसिक प्रश्न उठाया. जिस सिस्टम में मास एजुकेशन होगी और सेंटर ऑफ एक्सीलेंस नहीं होंगे, वहाँ पे तो मीडियोक्रेसी चलेगी. और wherever mediocrity rules the roost, excellence is a casualty, and that's the reason why हमारे अपने लोग यहाँ पे खो जाते हैं और बाहर जाके फ्लरिश करते हैं. Since it is a matter of the UPSC, मैं कहूँगा this steel frame is a self-serving system. ये वो हाथी है जिसके रिपल्स तो क्रिएट कर सकते हैं, आप चला नहीं सकते. कोई सूरत ही नहीं है, कोई आ जाए ये रिपल्स ही क्रिएट होने वाले हैं. और जब तक इसके फंडामेंटल, क्योंकि आर्मी के इश्यूज आ रहे हैं यहाँ पे, आपने कहा ना कि भाई अब तो महीने भर बाद टेक्नोलॉजी, आज हम ड्रोन कर रहे हैं. सर साइबर सिक्योरिटी के डायमेंशन हम बात इसलिए नहीं कर रहे, अभी उसके डेवेस्टेटिंग इफेक्ट्स हमने नहीं देखे हैं. जिस दिन सारा इंडिया का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर एक झटके में किसी ने पेनिट्रेट करके कोलैप्स कर दिया ना, उस दिन फिर ड्रोन की बात नहीं होगी, वो साइबर सिक्योरिटी. अच्छा, साइबर सिक्योरिटी का मतलब क्या है? अरे भाई हार्डवेयर ढूंढो, अरे भाई सॉफ्टवेयर ढूंढो. दैट्स नॉट साइबर सिक्योरिटी. अनफॉर्चुनेट पार्ट ये है कि हमारे माइंडसेट्स इतने कंडीशनड हो गए हैं कि फाइलें पुरानी जो है उनको झाड़ो पूछो, उसको देख लो कि हम रियलिटीज आज कहाँ देश, मतलब विश्व कहाँ जा रहा है. मतलब साइबर सिक्योरिटी का जब मैं हिंदुस्तान के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, हमारी सिस्टम के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देख रहा हूँ, मेरी रूह कांप जाती है. मैं वाकई बतला रहा हूँ. वी आर जस्ट क्लूलेस. ये ड्रोन्स कितने दिन तक चलने वाले हैं? ये 6 महीने का फिनोमेना है. मॉडर्न वॉरफेयर कहीं और जाने वाला है. रशिया ने पहले क्या करा था यूक्रेन में? उनकी बिजली बंद कर दी, अपने वहाँ पे कंप्यूटर पे ही तो कर दी थी, वो थोड़ी जाके उन्हें बॉम्ब करके करी थी. सर हम लोग कहीं, मतलब आगे ये विश्व कहाँ जा रहा है, दैट्स अ वेरी डिफरेंट पैराडाइम. हम लोग पोस्टस्क्रिप्ट की बात करते रहते हैं. हिंदुस्तान की प्रॉब्लम ये है कि हम लोग जो है, वी आर एनालिस्ट्स. आफ्टर एन इवेंट हैज हैपेंड, वी ऑल लव टू एनालाइज एंड लव टू गिव कमेंट्रीज. वी आर नॉट एंटिसिपेटिंग थिंग्स. वी आर नॉट इमेजिनेटिव इनफ to really look at the world order in a different way. Some random thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. In fact, as General said, on positive note, sir, हम आपको यकीन दिलाना चाहेंगे कि ये जो Gen Z बेटा है और हम जो यहाँ पे प्रयत्न कर रहे हैं, we are always looking at the positive side. हम इस डिस्कशन से भी मुद्दे निकालेंगे, महत्वपूर्ण बिंदु निकालेंगे, उसका अभ्यास करेंगे. सर, डॉक्टर अंबेडकर इंटरनेशनल सेंटर में जब ऐसे डिस्कशंस, पैनल डिस्कशंस होते हैं, तो वी डोंट लीव इट एट दैट. आवर रिसर्च एसोसिएट्स दे पेन डाउन दी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स. वी पब्लिश इट ऑन आवर वेबसाइट ऑल्सो. जब बात हो रही है सोशल मीडिया की, आई वुड लाइक टू रिक्वेस्ट एंड अर्ज ऑल द स्टूडेंट्स हियर कि आप डेफिनेटली विजिट करिए हमारी वेबसाइट, या वी आर ऑल्सो ऑन ऑल दी सोशल मीडियाज लाइक इंस्टा, एक्स एंड फेसबुक ऑल्सो. यू मे लाइक टू गिव योर कमेंट्स एंड योर रिमार्क्स. मुझे पता है यहाँ पे बहुत लोगों के पास बहुत सवाल है, बट वी आर कंप्लीटली आउट ऑफ द टाइम. यहाँ पे टू कंप्लीट द फॉर्मेलिटीज, आई वुड लाइक टू थैंक द डिस्टिंग्विश्ड पैनलिस्ट फॉर द इंसाइटफुल कमेंट्स ऑन दिस मोस्ट चैलेंजिंग टॉपिक. यू नो, जियोपॉलिटिक्स, टेक्नोलॉजी, डिसरप्टिव टेक्नोलॉजी. अभी हमारे यहाँ AI का समिट होने वाला है फरवरी में. वी ऑल आर अवेयर ऑफ दैट. We are taking lead into that. Look at the positive side. जो अल्बानिया ने तो एक मिनिस्टर को भी नॉमिनेट कर दिया है एज AI चैट बॉट के नाम से प्रोक्योरमेंट के लिए. यू वुड बी अवेयर ऑफ दैट. गुड, दैट इज द वे वी आर डेवलपिंग. दैट इज हाउ एट DAIC ऑल्सो वी आर ऑर्गेनाइजिंग these kind of panel discussions, which has been possible only because of the support from World Intellectual Foundation. Hemangi ji is here, and thanks to Mittal sir and ma'am, because of them we could organize this wonderful panel discussion. Thanks to all the academia here, the students here who have attended this panel discussion. I know you all students would be waiting for the refreshments, which is on first floor at Vaishali. So before we conclude, let me announce that, and I take this opportunity to invite our former Honorable Governor sir, Shri Jagdish Mukhi ji. He would like to present one coffee table book on Op Sindoor, sir, to all the distinguished panelists. And General Kulkarni also, may I request on the stage, please. The chairman of WIF, Honorable former Governor Sri Jagdish Mukhi ji.